The board meeting was supposed to start 5 minutes ago. 32 faces stared at the two empty chairs at the head of the table. The first belonged to Martin Chen, CEO of Meridian Holdings. The second was reserved for his wife, Olivia Chen, COO and founder of the company that had grown from a small family business into a regional powerhouse worth just shy of $1 billion. I smoothed my charcoal pencil skirt and checked my watch again, feeling the weight of eyes on me. As Olivia's executive assistant for the past 6 years, everyone expected me to know where she was. "Should we begin without them?" asked Dominic, the CFO, glancing at his Rolex with practiced impatience. The double doors burst open before I could answer. Martin strode in, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His navy suit jacket was missing, tie askew. The room fell silent as he took his seat without explanation. "Olivia won't be joining us," he announced, voice devoid of emotion. "Let's proceed." A murmur rippled through the room. In 15 years, Olivia Chen had never missed a quarterly board meeting. My phone buzzed with a text. I discreetly checked it under the table. It was from Olivia. "Elena, need you at my house. Now. Emergency." I slipped out of the conference room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Something was terribly wrong. As I hurried toward the elevator, I caught the eye of Martin's cousin, Lawrence, who gave me a look of such naked malice that I nearly stopped in my tracks. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the circular driveway of the Chen estate. Security let me through without question. I'd been here countless times before. The enormous Tudor-style mansion stood silent in the late afternoon sun, its windows like watchful eyes. The housekeeper led me upstairs without a word. I found Olivia in her home office, standing by the window still as a statue. At 47, she was striking rather than conventionally beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and calculating eyes that had intimidated countless business rivals. "You came," she said without turning. "Of course. What's happened?" She turned, and I stepped back involuntarily. The formidable woman who built a business empire from nothing, who never showed weakness to anyone, had tears streaming down her face. "I need a lawyer," she said, her voice eerily calm despite the tears. "And I need the company auditor's direct number." Olivia. "And I need you to help me destroy my husband and every single one of his relatives who work for my company." She held up her phone, showing me a video that was paused on the image of Martin, embracing a much younger woman in what appeared to be a doctor's office. The woman was beaming, holding what was unmistakably an ultrasound image. "Congratulations are in order." "Apparently." Olivia's voice cracked as she pressed play. The video began to play, and I watched in horror as Martin's family, his parents, his brother, his cousin Lawrence, his sister and her husband, all surrounded the young woman, whooping with joy, passing around champagne in plastic cups. They were celebrating right there in the doctor's office. "When was this taken?" I whispered, my stomach churning. "This morning, while I was in Seattle closing the Turner acquisition." Her laugh was hollow. "Now I understand why they were all too busy to attend." "I don't understand." "Who sent you this?" "One of the nurses. She recognized me from a charity event last month." Olivia's hand tightened around the phone. 18 years of marriage. "And it turns out my husband has been sleeping with his 26-year-old assistant for God knows how long." My mind raced, connecting dots. The assistant, Natalie Reed. Beautiful, bubbly Natalie, who had been hired 8 months ago despite being woefully underqualified. "That's not even the worst part," Olivia continued, sinking into her chair. "Look at their faces, Elena. Look at how happy they all are." I watched the video again. There was no mistaking the genuine joy on everyone's faces. Martin's mother was crying tears of happiness. His father was clapping his son on the back. Lawrence was making a toast, his voice too muffled to hear clearly. 6 of them, Olivia whispered. 6 family members who owe their careers to me, celebrating the woman who's been sleeping with my husband. She turned to me. Her tears dried, replaced by something much colder. "I built this company from nothing. I let Martin become the face of it because he's charming and people like him. I gave jobs to his family because he asked me to." Her voice hardened. "And this is how they repay me." I'd never seen that expression on her face before, and it sent chills down my spine. "What are you going to do?" "First," she said, standing up with renewed purpose, "I'm going to remind everyone who really owns Meridian Holdings." 3 years earlier. "Elena, I need the porter file and a double espresso," Olivia called from her office. "And tell my husband he's late for our 10 o'clock. I nodded, already dialing Martin's extension. As executive assistant to Olivia Chen, I'd learned to move quickly and anticipate needs before they were voiced. It was a demanding job, but I'd grown to admire the woman who had built Meridian Holdings from a small property management company into a diversified real estate empire spanning 3 states. "Mr. Chen's line is going to voicemail," I reported, setting the porter file on her desk. Olivia frowned, checking her watch. Try his cell. This wasn't like Martin. As CEO of Meridian, he was usually punctual to a fault, especially for meetings with his wife. The power couple had complementary skills. Olivia was the visionary and strategic force. Martin was the charismatic face who charmed clients and handled public relations. "No answer on his cell either," I said after trying. "Fine. We'll start without him. Send Lawrence in." Lawrence Chen, Martin's cousin and head of the commercial division, sauntered in minutes later. At 40, he was handsome in a polished way, with a perpetual smirk that suggested he knew something you didn't. "Where's Martin?" he asked, taking a seat across from Olivia. "That's what I'd like to know," she replied coolly. "Let's get started on the Westlake proposal." I was about to close the door when Martin burst in, slightly out of breath. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing Olivia on the cheek. Traffic was a nightmare. I noticed a smudge of pink lipstick on his collar as he passed me, a shade Olivia never wore. I said nothing and closed the door behind me. Working so closely with the Chens, I'd become privy to the complex dynamics of their relationship. They were business partners first, spouses second. Their marriage seemed built on mutual ambition and respect rather than passionate romance. Still, they presented a united front to the world and to Martin's extended family, many of whom held key positions within Meridian Holdings. There was Lawrence, of course, who headed commercial properties. Martin's younger brother, Derek, ran residential development, despite having no background in real estate before Olivia hired him. Their sister, Rebecca, managed investor relations, while her husband, James, oversaw the legal department. Even Martin's parents, Harold and Vivian, held honorary board positions with generous stipends. To outsiders, Meridian embodied the American dream of a successful family business. But those of us on the inside knew the truth. This was Olivia's company. She had founded it at 29 with money from her deceased parents' insurance policy. She had built it from the ground up, bringing Martin in only after they were married. And she had agreed to employ his relatives as a gesture of goodwill, despite her private reservations. "They're not qualified," she had confided in me once, after a particularly frustrating meeting with Derek. "But they're Martin's family, and family is important to him." That afternoon, I was filing contracts when I overheard Lawrence and Derek talking in the break room. "She's impossible," Lawrence was saying. "Nothing is ever good enough." "Tell me about it," Derek replied. "I presented 3 potential sites last week, and she shot down every one of them." "If she's such a genius, why doesn't she just do it all herself?" "Because then she'd have to admit she needs us," Lawrence laughed. "Martin's the only one who can handle her." Speaking of, where was he this morning? "Mom said he was supposed to pick her up for breakfast, but he never showed." Lawrence's voice dropped. "Between us, I think he's got something on the side." I froze, hand hovering over the filing cabinet. "No way!" Derek sounded genuinely shocked. "Martin? Don't act so surprised. They haven't exactly been lovey-dovey lately. And he's been taking these mysterious client meetings that aren't on his calendar." "Does she suspect?" "Olivia, please. She's too busy running everyone's life to notice what's happening in her own marriage." I quietly closed the drawer and slipped away, troubled by what I'd heard. It wasn't my place to report office gossip to my boss, especially about her husband. But over the next few months, I began to notice patterns that supported Lawrence's theory. Martin's unexplained absences, calls he took in private, late nights at the office that didn't correspond with any projects I knew about. The way he would sometimes look at his phone and smile in a way he never did when looking at Olivia. I debated whether to say something. Olivia wasn't just my boss, she was my mentor. She'd taken a chance on me when I had little experience, paid for my MBA night classes, and groomed me for advancement within the company. I owed her my loyalty, but I also knew she valued facts over suspicions. Without concrete evidence, raising concerns about her marriage would be both unprofessional and potentially devastating to my career if I was wrong. So I watched and waited, hoping I was misreading the situation. Meanwhile, tensions within the company grew as Meridian prepared to launch its most ambitious project yet, a $200 million mixed-use development called Cascade Heights that would cement their reputation as a major player beyond regional markets. The project had been Olivia's vision, but she'd allowed Martin to take credit for much of the initial concept in the press. His family had been assigned key roles, with Lawrence overseeing the commercial leasing, Derek handling residential sales, and Rebecca coordinating with investors. "I need everyone aligned on this," Olivia told me as we reviewed the project timeline. "Cascade Heights will either make us or break us." What she didn't say, but what I understood, was that Cascade Heights represented more than just a business opportunity. It was Olivia's attempt to fully integrate Martin's family into her company, to make them feel ownership and pride in what she had built, to transform her company into their company. It was a generous gesture from a woman who didn't make them often. As the launch date for Cascade Heights approached, Martin became increasingly absent. Olivia covered for him in meetings, made excuses to clients, and worked even longer hours than usual. I could see the toll it was taking on her, though she would never admit to any weakness. Then came the day of the groundbreaking ceremony. Hundreds of people gathered at the future site of Cascade Heights: investors, media, politicians, prospective tenants. A stage had been set up with a ceremonial shovel. Olivia stood at the podium, elegant in a tailored navy suit, waiting for Martin to arrive for their joint presentation. He was 30 minutes late, arriving just as Olivia was finishing what should have been his portion of the speech. He offered no explanation, simply taking his place beside her for the photos, flashing his trademark smile for the cameras. Later, as the crowd mingled during the reception, I overheard an argument between them in the temporary office set up on site. "Where were you?" Olivia's voice was controlled but ice cold. "I told you. I had a last-minute meeting that ran long." "With whom?" A pause. "A potential investor. It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me when you leave me standing alone at our most important launch in years." "You handled it beautifully." "You always do." His voice softened, turning cajoling. "That's why we work so well together, Liv. You're the backbone. I'm the face." "And what does that make your family?" "The appendix? Unnecessary but potentially problematic?" Another pause, longer this time. "They're trying, Olivia. Not everyone can be you. I don't expect them to be me. I expect them to do their jobs competently and be grateful for the opportunity." "Grateful?" Martin's tone changed. "Always grateful. Never forgetting that the mighty Olivia Chen gave them a chance. That's not fair, isn't it? You never let any of us forget whose name is on the founding documents. Whose money started all this? Because it was my money, my vision, my risk. And I've helped you build it into something much bigger than you could have done alone." "We all have." The conversation was interrupted by a knock, Lawrence announcing that the mayor wanted to speak with both of them. They emerged from the office with practiced smiles, the disagreement invisibly tucked away. But something had shifted. I could see it in the rigid set of Olivia's shoulders, in the distance she kept between herself and Martin for the remainder of the event. The crack in their partnership was beginning to show. Over the next few months, Martin's absences became more frequent and less explained. The family seemed to close ranks around him, Lawrence covering for him in meetings, Rebecca deflecting questions, Derek changing the subject whenever Martin's whereabouts came up, and then came the Seattle trip. The Turner acquisition that would add a significant portfolio of properties to Meridian's holdings in the Pacific Northwest. Olivia had been planning it for months. I need you to stay here and keep things running, she told me the day before her departure. With Martin and me both gone, someone needs to mind the store. I frowned. Martin's going with you? She looked up from her packing, surprised. Of course. Why wouldn't he? Because he's been avoiding business trips with you for months, I wanted to say. Because something isn't right. Instead, I nodded. Just confirming the schedule. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly here. I know you will. That's why you're invaluable to me, Elena. The morning of her departure, Olivia called me from the airport, her voice tight with controlled anger. Martin's not coming. Apparently he has a family emergency he needs to handle. I'm sorry, I said, unsure what else to offer. His mother called me, if you can believe it. Not him, his mother. Telling me her son couldn't make the trip. She paused. Elena, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Find out what's really going on. I've ignored the signs long enough. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, considering my options. As Olivia's assistant, I had access to nearly everything. Martin's calendar, his email, his expense reports. I could easily look for inconsistencies, unexplained charges, suspicious meetings. But did I want to be the one to potentially shatter her world? To confirm what I feared was true? In the end, my loyalty to Olivia won out. She had asked for my help, and I would provide it. I spent the day combing through records, looking for patterns, building a case. What I found made my stomach sink. Repeated charges at the same upscale restaurant. Always for 2 people, never included in client meeting reports. A jewelry purchase that coincided with no birthdays or anniversaries I knew of. And most damning of all, a series of emails between Martin and the company's HR director discussing a new hire, Natalie Reed, whose resume was laughably thin for the position she was given as Martin's personal assistant, 6 months. Earlier, I compiled everything into a folder, unsure of how to present it to Olivia when she returned. As it turned out, I never got the chance. The video from the nurse arrived first. The morning after Olivia received the video, I arrived at the Chen estate to find her transformed. Gone was the raw emotion of the previous evening, replaced by a cold, calculating precision that was somehow more frightening. I've been up all night, she said, ushering me into her home office, going through everything. The room looked like a war room. Laptops open to various documents, papers spread across the massive desk. Legal pads filled with her tight, controlled handwriting. Olivia, you should rest. I'll rest when I'm done. She handed me a stack of papers. I need you to familiarize yourself with these. They're the original founding documents of Meridian Holdings. I scanned the first page. You're the sole owner. Yes. When we expanded and took on investors, I maintained 51% ownership. Martin owns 20%. The remaining 29% is divided among our investors. I know all this. What you don't know, she continued, pulling out another document, is that every family member Martin brought into the company signed this. It was an employment contract with unusual provisions. A morality clause? I asked, surprised. Among other things. I insisted on it. Martin thought I was being paranoid. Her smile was razor sharp. Turns out I wasn't paranoid enough. What are you planning to do? First, I'm going to call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Then, I'm going to remove every single member of the Chen family from their positions. Effective immediately, I stared at her. All of them? Even Martin? Especially Martin. The bylaws give me the authority as majority shareholder. They can challenge it in court if they want, but they'll lose. She tapped the morality clause. Affairs with subordinates, nepotism, breach of fiduciary duty. I have enough to bury them all. Olivia, I said carefully, this is going to cause an earthquake in the company. The projects they're overseeing will be reassigned. I've been preparing contingency plans all night. She pushed another folder toward me. I want you to take over as interim head of operations. I nearly dropped the papers I was holding. Me? But I'm your assistant. You're also the most competent person in the building next to me. You have an MBA. You know every aspect of our business. And most importantly, I trust you. The weight of her words settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just a promotion. This was Olivia declaring war on her husband and his entire family and positioning me as her lieutenant. "There's something else you should know," I said, making a decision. "I've been gathering information since you asked me to look into Martin's behavior." I handed her the folder I'd compiled. She flipped through it, her expression hardening with each page. "So it's been going on for at least 8 months, she said finally. "At least, maybe longer. And they've all known, covered for him." She closed the folder with deliberate care. "Elena, what I'm about to do will make me enemies, powerful ones. Are you sure you want to stand with me?" "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. She nodded once, as if my answer was exactly what she expected. "Then let's get to work." The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. Olivia contacted her personal attorney, not the company's legal counsel who reported to James. She spoke with select board members who weren't aligned with Martin's family. She had IT backup and secure all company files and emails. And she instructed me to prepare termination papers for 7 people: Martin, Lawrence, Derek, Rebecca, James, and Martin's parents, Harold and Vivian. "We'll need security," I pointed out, imagining the chaos that would ensue. "Already arranged, and the locks to the executive floor will be changed tonight." By dawn, we had barely slept, but everything was in place. Olivia looked at me across the desk, the first rays of sunlight casting harsh shadows across her face. "There's one more thing," she said. "Natalie Reed." My stomach clenched. In the rush to deal with the family, I had almost forgotten about the pregnant mistress. What about her? "I want her gone too, but differently." Olivia's voice was dangerously soft. "I don't want to be the villain who fired a pregnant woman. That's not the narrative I'm willing to accept." "What do you have in mind?" "A generous severance package, a glowing recommendation, and a non-disclosure agreement that will ensure she never speaks publicly about her relationship with Martin." I nodded, relieved. Despite everything, Olivia wasn't going to punish the young woman unduly. It was Martin and his family who had betrayed her trust, not some ambitious girl who'd gotten caught up with her married boss. "I'll handle it," I promised. "Good, because I don't trust myself to be in the same room with her." We arrived at Meridian headquarters at precisely 7:30 a.m., an hour before most employees would arrive. Security met us in the lobby, along with Olivia's attorney and a notary. We rode the elevator to the executive floor in silence. As the doors opened, we found Lawrence already there, standing by the reception desk with a cup of coffee. His eyebrows rose in surprise at our entourage. "Early meeting?" he asked, his tone casual but eyes wary. "You could say that," Olivia replied. "My office, please." He followed us, confusion turning to alarm as he noticed the security guards and strangers accompanying us. Inside Olivia's spacious corner office, he remained standing. "What's going on?" "I'm terminating your employment with Meridian Holdings," Olivia said without preamble. "Effective immediately." Lawrence laughed, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Very funny, Olivia. What's this really about?" She slid the termination papers across the desk. "It's about breach of contract, specifically the morality clause you signed when you joined the company." His face darkened. "What are you talking about?" "I know about Martin and Natalie. I know about the baby. And I know you've been covering for him." Lawrence's expression shifted from confusion to calculation in an instant. "Olivia, let's be reasonable. Whatever issues you and Martin are having, this isn't about my marriage. This is about my company." Her voice was steel. "You've betrayed my trust, undermined my authority, and violated your contractual obligations. Now you have a choice. Sign these papers, accept the severance package, and leave quietly, or fight me in court and get nothing." Lawrence stared at her, then at me, then at the security guards flanking the door. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "The family won't stand for this. The family will be joining you in unemployment within the hour. She pushed a pen toward him. Your decision, Lawrence. For a moment, I thought he might lunge across the desk at her. Instead, he picked up the pen, scrawled his signature on the papers, and dropped the pen as if it had burned him. You'll regret this, he said, voice low. Martin built this company as much as you did. Martin built nothing. Olivia's calm was terrifying. He was the pretty face I put on my creation because people respond better to charming men than competent women. Now get out of my building. As security escorted him out, I could see Lawrence pulling out his phone, no doubt to warn the others. It didn't matter. We had anticipated this. One by one, they arrived. Derek, Rebecca, James, Harold, and Vivian, each responding with varying degrees of shock, anger, and desperate negotiation, each ultimately signing the papers when confronted with the evidence of their complicity and the legal consequences of refusing. Martin was last. He strode in at 9:15 a.m., having ignored the multiple urgent messages left by his family members. His confident smile faltered when he saw the security guards, the attorney, and me standing beside Olivia. What's happening? He asked, looking around. Where is everyone? Gone, Olivia said simply. And now it's your turn. I had expected shouting, denials, perhaps even tears. What I hadn't expected was Martin's laugh, genuine, almost relieved. So, you know, he said, loosening his tie. About Natalie. And the baby. And your family's enthusiastic support. He nodded slowly. I was going to tell you after the Turner deal closed. I didn't want to disrupt. Spare me, Olivia cut him off. I'm not interested in your explanations or excuses. I'm interested in you signing these divorce papers and these termination papers, and then getting out of my life. Martin's eyebrows rose. Divorce? Olivia, let's not be hasty. We can work through this. Many couples do. We're not many couples. And this isn't just about the affair. It's about the betrayal. Yours and every member of your family who celebrated your mistress's pregnancy while working for my company. Something shifted in Martin's expression, a hardening, a calculation. He glanced at me with new wariness, then back at Olivia. You've been busy, he observed, firing everyone in a single morning. That's efficient, even for you. I learned from the best, she replied coldly. Now sign the papers. He made no move toward the desk. And if I don't? If I fight you on this? Then I'll release the evidence of your affair to the board, the media, and every major client we have. I'll sue you for breach of contract. I'll make sure everyone knows that while I was in Seattle closing a major acquisition, you were celebrating your mistress's pregnancy with your entire family. You would burn down everything we've built together? Over this? You set the fire, Martin. I'm just making sure you burn with it. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the desk. 18 years of partnership, love, ambition, and now betrayal concentrated into a single silent confrontation. Then Martin did something unexpected. He smiled. You know what, Olivia? You're right. I don't want to fight you. You'd win, and we both know it. He reached for the papers. But before I sign these, I want you to know something. She waited, expressionless. I've loved Natalie for almost a year. It's not just some fling. And my family, they're happy for me because they've seen how unhappy I've been. How cold our marriage became. How everything was always about the company, about your vision, your legacy. Are you expecting sympathy? Olivia asked, her voice devoid of emotion. No, I'm explaining why I'm not going to fight you on this. He signed both sets of papers with a flourish. The company was always your true love, Olivia. Now you can have it all to yourself. As he stood to leave, he looked at me. Take care of her, Elena. She'll need someone when she realizes what she's truly lost. Security escorted him out, and suddenly, the office was quiet. Olivia sat perfectly still, staring at the signed papers. "Are you all right?" I asked softly. She looked up, and to my surprise, there was something like relief in her eyes. "I've been married to my company longer than I've been married to Martin," she said. "It's the only partnership that's never disappointed me." The rest of the day was chaos. News of the mass firings spread through the company like wildfire. Olivia called an all-hands meeting at noon, where she announced the departures and the interim leadership structure. There were shocked faces, whispered conversations, and a palpable atmosphere of uncertainty. But there was something else too, a current of excitement, of possibility. For years, Martin's family had occupied positions that many felt they hadn't earned. Their departures created opportunities for advancement based on merit rather than blood. By late afternoon, I was settling into my new office, formerly Lawrence's, when Olivia appeared in the doorway. "One more task," she said, placing a folder on my desk. Inside was the severance package for Natalie Reed. "I thought you might want to deliver this personally," Olivia said. I looked up at her, surprised. "Me? Why?" "Because I can't trust myself to be civil, and because I think she deserves to hear the truth from someone who won't judge her too harshly." I nodded slowly. "I'll take care of it." An hour later, I knocked on the door of Martin's former office, where Natalie Reed still sat, unaware that her world was about to change. She looked up, her pretty face brightening with a smile that faltered when she saw my expression. "Elena? What's wrong?" "Everyone's been acting strange all day." I closed the door behind me and took a seat across from her. "Natalie, there's no easy way to say this. Martin Chen has been terminated from Meridian Holdings. So have all members of his family who worked here." Her face drained of color. One hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach. I don't understand." "Why?" "Because Olivia knows about your relationship with Martin. She knows about the pregnancy. She has video of the celebration at your doctor's office yesterday." Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "Oh God, is she going to fire me too?" I slid the folder across the desk. "This is a severance package, 6 months' salary, health insurance coverage for a year, and a letter of recommendation for future employment." She stared at the folder as if it might bite her. "She's not destroying me?" "No," I said gently. "Olivia doesn't blame you for what happened. She blames Martin and his family for the betrayal." A tear slipped down Natalie's cheek. "He said she didn't love him anymore, that their marriage was just for show." I chose my words carefully. Marriages are complicated. I can't speak to what was between them. But I can tell you that Olivia built this company from nothing, gave jobs to Martin's entire family, and they repaid her by celebrating her husband's infidelity. Natalie winced. "When you put it that way..." "There's a non-disclosure agreement in there," I continued. "If you sign it, agreeing never to speak publicly about your relationship with Martin while employed here, the severance package is yours. And if I don't sign, then you're terminated without severance. And Olivia's attorneys will pursue legal action for any statements you make that could damage the company's reputation." Natalie nodded slowly, understanding the choice that wasn't really a choice. Can I at least say goodbye to my things?" "Of course. Security will escort you once you're ready." As I stood to leave, she called after me. "Elena, will you tell Olivia something for me?" I paused at the door. "Tell her I'm sorry. Not for loving Martin, but for the way it happened, for the celebration. I didn't know everyone was coming. Martin arranged it. I would never have..." "I'll tell her," I promised, though I wasn't sure if Olivia would want to hear it. As I walked back to my new office, I felt the weight of the day's events pressing down on me. In less than 24 hours, the entire leadership structure of Meridian Holdings had been upended. 7 people had been fired. A marriage had ended, and I had been thrust into a position of power I'd never anticipated. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "My office, 5 p.m. When I arrived, she was standing by the window, watching the sunset cast long shadows across the city. Without turning, she asked, "Is it done?" "Yes, she'll sign the NDA." "Good." She was silent for a moment. "Did she have anything to say?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. Not for loving Martin, but for the celebration. She said she didn't know everyone would be there. Olivia nodded once, absorbing this. Do you believe her? I do. She turned finally, her face composed but tired. So do I. She's young, in love, and pregnant. Martin is the villain in this story, not her. And his family. Accomplices. Her voice hardened. They chose their side. Now they can live with the consequences. What happens now? I asked. Olivia smiled for the first time that day. A small, determined smile that reminded me why I'd always admired her. Now? We rebuild. Better than before? She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Sit, we have work to do. As the sun set on the most tumultuous day in Meridian's history, we began planning the company's future. A future without the Chen family, but with the same vision and determination that had built it in the first place. What neither of us realized was that Martin and his family weren't going to disappear quietly into the night. Their retaliation was coming, and it would test both of us in ways we couldn't imagine. 3 months after what employees had taken to calling the purge, Meridian Holdings was thriving. Initial turbulence had given way to a renewed sense of purpose and meritocracy. With Martin and his family gone, talented employees who had been overlooked for promotions now had opportunities to advance. Morale improved. Productivity increased. The stock price, after an initial dip, climbed to new highs. Olivia seemed reborn. Freed from the constraints of managing family politics, she led with a clarity and confidence that inspired everyone around her. And I was learning to navigate my new role as Chief Operating Officer with growing assurance. The divorce proceedings were moving forward without drama. Martin had surprised everyone by not contesting any of Olivia's terms. He would walk away with his 20% ownership stake in the company, still valuable but without any controlling influence, and a cash settlement that was generous but far less than he might have won in a contested divorce. It's almost too easy, I commented to Olivia one evening as we reviewed the latest draft of the settlement agreement. Martin knows when he's beaten, she replied, but there was a wariness in her eyes that matched my own unease. Then came the anonymous email. It arrived simultaneously to the personal accounts of every Meridian board member, bypassing company servers entirely. The subject line read simply, "The true Olivia Chen." The email contained documents that appeared to show Olivia had manipulated financial records in the early days of Meridian to secure the initial funding, documents that suggested she had committed fraud to launch her empire. Attached was a video, message from Martin, looking solemn and regretful. I've struggled with whether to reveal this information for years, he said, his expression pained. I discovered these discrepancies early in our marriage, but chose to protect Olivia out of love. Now that she has chosen to destroy our family rather than work through our marital problems, I can no longer in good conscience remain silent. Meridian Holdings was built on a foundation of deception. Olivia called an emergency meeting of the board the moment the email came to light. I sat beside her as she addressed the 12 men and women who could potentially remove her from the company she had built. These allegations are categorically false, she stated, her voice steady despite the stakes. The documents Martin provided have been doctored. I have instructed our auditors to conduct a complete forensic accounting of our financial history, going back to the founding of the company. I have nothing to hide. Why would Martin fabricate such serious allegations? Asked one board member, his expression troubled. Olivia's smile was cold. Revenge is a powerful motivator, as is greed. If I'm removed from my position, who do you think is best positioned to take over? A man who still owns 20% of the company and has family members eager to return to their lucrative positions. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. I need your trust while we investigate these claims, Olivia continued. In the meantime, business continues as usual. Meridian is stronger than ever, as our quarterly results will show. The board agreed to withhold judgment until the forensic accounting was complete. a process that would take weeks. As we left the meeting, Olivia maintained her composed facade. Only when we were alone in her office did she allow her fury to show. "This is war," she said, pacing the room. "Martin knows those documents are fake. He's trying to destroy everything I've built." "We'll prove they're forgeries," I assured her. "The truth is on our side." She stopped pacing and fixed me with an intent gaze. "The truth may not be enough, Elena. Martin has his family behind him, 6 people all telling the same lie. We need to be prepared for the possibility that perception will matter more than reality. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need to fight fire with fire." She sat down, energy suddenly focused. "Martin wants to rewrite history? Fine. Let's make sure the real story gets told." Over the next few days, a plan took shape. Olivia contacted a financial journalist who had covered Meridian's rise with particular interest over the years. She offered him exclusive access to the company's founding documents, early investors, and her personal records, everything needed to tell the true story of how Meridian began. Meanwhile, I embarked on a different kind of investigation. With Olivia's blessing, I began looking into Martin's family more deeply than we ever had before. If they wanted to play dirty, we needed leverage. What I found surprised even Olivia. Lawrence, Martin's cousin who had headed commercial properties, had been skimming from development budgets for years, small amounts from multiple projects that added up to significant sums over time. Derek, the younger brother in charge of residential development, had been inflating property values in reports to investors while presenting more conservative estimates to Olivia. Rebecca and her husband James had used company resources to invest in competitor projects through shell companies, a clear conflict of interest. And most damning of all, Martin himself had been quietly shifting company assets to prepare for the launch of a competing real estate firm. Paperwork filed just 2 months before Olivia discovered his affair. He was planning to leave all along, Olivia said quietly when I presented my findings. The affair, the pregnancy, it was the excuse, not the cause. The evidence was undeniable. Martin hadn't just betrayed Olivia personally, he had been systematically betraying the company for months, possibly years, and his family had been complicit every step of the way. "What do we do with this?" I asked. Olivia considered the question carefully. "We could go to the authorities. Press charges for financial malfeasance. That would damage Meridian's reputation, too." "Yes, it would." She nodded slowly. "So we use it as leverage instead. A counterstrike." The next morning, Olivia instructed her attorney to contact Martin with a simple message. "We know what you've done. All of you, back off or face criminal charges." Martin's response came within hours, not to Olivia's attorney, but directly to her private email. It was just 3 words: "Board meeting tomorrow." Something about the confidence in those 3 words sent a chill through me when Olivia showed me the email. "He's planning something," I said. "Of course he is. But so am I." The board convened at 10 a.m. the next day. Martin arrived early, accompanied by Lawrence, Derek, Rebecca, James, and his parents, the entire ousted Chen family, presenting a united front. They took seats in the back of the boardroom, silent but watchful. Olivia showed no reaction to their presence, taking her place at the head of the table with the same commanding presence she always projected. I sat to her right, acutely aware of the tension in the room. The board chair called the meeting to order. "Before we begin, I understand Mr. Chen has requested an opportunity to address the board." Martin stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. He looked every bit the successful executive, confident, polished, and utterly reasonable. "Thank you for allowing me to speak today," he began. "I know my presence, along with my family's, may be unexpected given recent events. But what I have to share concerns the future of Meridian Holdings, a company I still own a significant stake in, and one I helped build for nearly 2 decades. Olivia's face remained impassive, but I could feel her tension in the slight stiffening of her posture beside me. 3 months ago, my wife made a unilateral decision to remove me and every member of my family from our positions within this company. She did so based on personal, grievances that had nothing to do with our professional performance or contributions to Meridian's success. A murmur rippled through the board members. I accepted her decision at the time because I believed a public fight would damage the company we all care about. But in the months since, I've watched with growing concern as Olivia has consolidated power and made decisions that threaten Meridian's long-term stability, such as— Olivia interjected, her voice cool. Martin turned to her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Such as promoting an executive assistant with no relevant experience to chief operating officer, bypassing numerous qualified candidates. I felt heat rise to my face as several board members glanced my way. Elena Morgan holds an MBA from Stanford and has been intimately involved in every aspect of Meridian's operations for 6 years, Olivia countered. Her qualifications are beyond question. But please, continue with your concerns. Martin nodded graciously. Such as the misrepresentation of financial records I recently brought to light, and such as the hasty restructuring that has destabilized key client relationships and created internal confusion about reporting lines. He walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each board member. But my greatest concern is this. Olivia Chen is no longer acting in the best interests of Meridian Holdings. She is acting out of personal vengeance, making decisions based on emotion rather than sound business judgment. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Chen, the board chair noted. It is, and I don't make it lightly. Martin paused for effect. Which is why I've come today with a proposal that I believe will secure Meridian's future while acknowledging the reality of our situation. He nodded to Lawrence, who distributed folders to each board member. Inside, you'll find an offer to purchase Olivia's majority stake in Meridian Holdings at a premium of 30% above current market value. The funding comes from a consortium of investors who believe in Meridian's potential under new leadership. Shocked silence filled the room. Even Olivia couldn't hide her surprise. Martin continued, This offer provides Olivia with a generous exit that acknowledges her founding role while allowing the company to move forward under more stable leadership. The leadership team would include myself and other experienced executives who understand Meridian's operations intimately. You mean your family? Olivia said flatly. I mean qualified professionals who built this company alongside you, Martin corrected smoothly. The board would retain its independence and oversight functions. This isn't a hostile takeover. It's a reasonable solution to an untenable situation. The board chair cleared his throat. This is unexpected. The board will need time to consider such a proposal. Of course, Martin agreed. I merely ask that you give it serious consideration, keeping in mind your fiduciary duty to all shareholders. As he returned to his seat, Olivia stood. The room fell silent again, all eyes on her. For a moment, I feared she might lose her composure. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated. But when she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. Martin's offer is certainly creative. It's also transparent in its true intent. To seize control of a company he couldn't build himself, using money he doesn't have, based on allegations he fabricated. She walked to the center of the room, commanding attention. I founded Meridian Holdings 18 years ago with a vision of creating something lasting and meaningful. Martin joined me 2 years later after we were married. Yes, he contributed. Yes, he helped Meridian grow. But he did not build it from nothing, as I did. She turned to face Martin directly. 3 months ago, I discovered that my husband had been having an affair with his assistant. That was painful, but marriages end every day. What forced my hand was learning that Martin's entire family, all of whom I had given high-paying positions in my company, had been celebrating his mistress's pregnancy while I was working to close an acquisition that would benefit them all. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. I removed them from their positions because their loyalty was clearly not to Meridian, but to Martin personally. Today's performance only confirms that assessment. She returned to her place at the head of the table. Now, regarding this offer, I am not selling my shares. Not to Martin, not to his mysterious consortium, not to anyone. But since we're all here, I do have some information to share with the board. She nodded to me, and I distributed our own folders, containing the evidence of financial malfeasance by Martin and his family. What you're looking at is documentation of systematic financial abuse of company resources by Martin Chen and each family member present in this room. Today, embezzlement, conflicts of interest, misappropriation of company assets. Olivia's voice was steady. Most seriously, evidence that Martin has been preparing to launch a competing real estate development firm using knowledge, contacts, and resources gained through his position at Meridian. The room erupted in shocked conversations. Martin's face flushed dark red. "These are baseless accusations," he sputtered. "They are meticulously documented facts," Olivia corrected. "Facts that I have not yet shared with the authorities, out of concern for Meridian's reputation. But I will, if forced to defend my company from this transparent attempt at a coup." She looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member just as Martin had done. "I built Meridian from nothing. I made it strong enough to survive the removal of 7 underqualified executives who happened to share a last name. And I will continue to lead it to greater success, with or without your support." She paused. "But I hope it will be with your support." The board chair cleared his throat again, clearly thrown by the dramatic turn of events. "I think we need to adjourn to consider both presentations. We'll reconvene in 1 hour." As people began to file out, Martin approached Olivia, his face a mask of controlled fury. "You would rather destroy everything than let me win," he said quietly. Olivia met his gaze steadily. "No, Martin. I would rather protect what I built from someone who never understood its true value." "This isn't over," he warned. "On the contrary," she replied. "It was over the moment you decided your family was more important than your wife. Everything since has just been epilogue." He turned to leave, but she called after him, loud enough for the remaining board members to hear. "Martin, how is Natalie? And the baby?" He froze momentarily, then continued walking without answering. An hour later, the board reconvened. The chair spoke without preamble, after reviewing both proposals and the concerning documentation provided. The board has decided to reject Mr. Chen's offer to purchase Ms. Chen's shares. Furthermore, we have voted unanimously to express our full confidence in Olivia Chen's leadership and the current executive team. Martin stood abruptly, his family rising behind him like a choreographed unit. "You're making a mistake," he said, his composure finally cracking. "She'll run this company into the ground without me." The board chair shook his head. "The evidence suggests otherwise, Mr. Chen. Meridian's performance has improved in all key metrics since the leadership changes 3 months ago." "This isn't the end," Martin insisted, looking directly at Olivia. "For you at Meridian?" "Yes, it is," she replied calmly. "Please don't contact me or anyone at this company again except through your attorney. And Martin, congratulations on the baby." After they left, the board meeting continued with routine business. If board members were rattled by the confrontation they'd just witnessed, they didn't show it. In fact, several went out of their way to express support for Olivia's leadership. When the meeting finally adjourned, Olivia and I walked back to her office in silence. Once the door closed behind us, she sank into her chair with uncharacteristic heaviness. "Are you all right?" I asked. She looked up, a complex mixture of emotions crossing her face. 18 years, Elena. 18 years I was married to that man. And all along, he was just waiting for the right moment to take what I built. But he failed, I reminded her. Yes. A small smile lifted the corner of her mouth. He did. What happens now? With the evidence against them? She considered the question carefully. We keep it in reserve. As insurance. As long as they leave Meridian alone, I have no interest in pursuing charges that would damage the company's reputation. I nodded, relieved. Despite everything, public scandal would hurt everyone involved, including the hundreds of employees who depended on Meridian for their livelihoods. And personally? I ventured. What happens for you now? Olivia looked out the window at the city skyline, her expression thoughtful. I rebuild, not just the company, myself. She turned back to me. I gave 18 years to a marriage that was ultimately a business arrangement. I won't make that mistake again, meaning life is too short for partnerships without real trust. She smiled, more genuinely this time. Speaking of partners I trust, we have work to do. Cascade Heights won't build itself. And just like that, she was back to business, the formidable Olivia Chen I had always admired. But something had changed. The wall she had maintained between her professional and personal self had cracked, revealing glimpses of a woman who was more complex, more vulnerable, and ultimately more resilient than I had realized. As I left her office, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in 3 months. Careers destroyed. A marriage ended. A company transformed. And through it all, the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be defined by betrayal, who chose instead to rebuild on her own terms. 1 year later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for Cascade Heights was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a perfect autumn morning. Media crews had been setting up since dawn. Local politicians hovered near the stage, eager to be associated with the most successful development project in the city's recent history. I stood off to the side, reviewing my notes for the introduction I would give. As Chief Operating Officer of Meridian Holdings, it was my responsibility to start the proceedings before handing over to Olivia for the main address. "Nervous?" asked Daniel, our new head of commercial properties, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. I accepted one gratefully. "A little. This is Olivia's moment, though. I'm just setting the stage." "Don't sell yourself short," he said with a smile. "Everyone knows you were instrumental in making Cascade Heights happen, especially after the restructuring." The restructuring was our polite corporate term for the removal of the Chen family. In the years since that dramatic board meeting, Meridian had not only survived, but thrived. We had completed the Cascade Heights project ahead of schedule and under budget. Our stock price had risen 40%, and the toxic culture of nepotism had been replaced with a meritocracy that attracted top talent from competitors. "Have you seen her this morning?" Daniel asked. "Not yet. She wanted some time alone before the ceremony." I understood why. Today marked not just the completion of Meridian's flagship project, but also the finalization of Olivia's divorce from Martin. The timing wasn't coincidental. Olivia had deliberately scheduled the ribbon cutting for the same day to symbolize her complete break from the past and her commitment to Meridian's future. As if summoned by our conversation, Olivia appeared from the temporary office set up on site. She wore a tailored crimson suit that stood out like a flag against the neutral tones of the building behind her. At 48, she radiated confidence and purpose, her dark hair cut in a sleek new style that framed her face perfectly. "Good morning," she said, joining us. "Beautiful day for a new beginning." "Everything's ready," I assured her. "Full media presence, all the right politicians, and nearly 100% occupancy to announce." "Perfect." She took a deep breath, surveying the crowd gathering before the stage. "Any sign of unwanted guests?" I knew she meant Martin and his family. "None, and security has been briefed." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. The threat of legal action for financial misconduct had kept Martin at bay for the past year. The divorce had been finalized with minimal drama. According to our sources, he was now living in another state with Natalie and their 6-month-old daughter. "It's time," I said, checking my watch. As we moved toward the stage, Olivia touched my arm lightly. "Elena, whatever happens today, remember that none of this would have been possible without you." Before I could respond, she continued toward the stage, greeting investors and city officials with practiced charm. I followed, puzzled by her cryptic comment. What did she mean, whatever happens today? The ceremony began right on schedule. I gave my introduction, highlighting the vision behind Cascade Heights, a mixed-use development that combined luxury apartments, office space, retail, and community areas in a sustainable, forward-thinking design. The crowd applauded appreciatively as I invited Olivia to the podium. She took her place with the poise of someone accustomed to the spotlight. But as she began to speak, I noticed something different in her demeanor, a lightness, almost a playfulness. that I hadn't seen before. Cascade Heights represents more than just a successful real estate development, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the crowd. It represents the power of resilience, of adaptation, and of staying true to your vision even when the path forward seems unclear. She paused, looking out over the assembled guests. A year ago, Meridian Holdings faced a crisis that could have destroyed everything we had built. Instead, that crisis became an opportunity, a chance to rebuild not just our leadership structure, but our entire company culture. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew the broad strokes of what had happened, but Olivia rarely spoke of it publicly. I learned something valuable through that experience, she continued. I learned that the right partners, in business and in life, are those who share not just your goals, but your values. Who stand with you in difficult times not out of obligation, but out of genuine loyalty and belief in what you're trying to build. Her gaze found mine in the crowd, and something in her expression made my heart beat faster. That's why today, as we celebrate the completion of Cascade Heights, I'm also announcing a new chapter for Meridian Holdings. She smiled. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO. Gasps and confused whispers erupted from the audience. I stared at her in shock. This was not part of the plan. There had been no discussions, no preparations for a leadership transition. Olivia raised a hand, quieting the crowd. This isn't goodbye. I will remain as chairwoman of the board, focusing on long-term strategy and new ventures. But the day-to-day leadership of Meridian will pass to someone who has earned my complete trust and who embodies the values that will carry this company forward. She turned toward me, extending her hand. Elena Morgan, would you join me at the podium? Stunned, I moved automatically to her side. The crowd's confusion had shifted to interest, all eyes now on both of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce Elena Morgan, the new Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Holdings, Olivia announced, her voice warm with pride. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. I stood frozen beside her, completely blindsided. Say something, she murmured, stepping back from the microphone. I leaned forward, mind racing. Thank you for your confidence, Olivia, I began, buying time to compose my thoughts. This is unexpected. Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. Finding my footing, I continued. When I joined Meridian Holdings 6 years ago as an executive assistant, I never imagined standing here today, but that's the culture Olivia Chen created. One where talent and hard work are recognized and rewarded, regardless of title or background. I looked out at the faces watching me, employees, investors, clients, media, and suddenly knew exactly what needed to be said. Meridian has always been about building things that last, not just buildings, but relationships, communities, and opportunities. Under my leadership, that commitment will only strengthen. We will continue to grow, to innovate, and to create value not just for our shareholders, but for everyone whose lives are touched by our work. I turned to Olivia. And we will always honor the vision of our founder, whose courage and integrity set the standard that guides us. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. The ribbon was cut. Champagne flowed. Congratulations poured in from all sides. Through it all, I kept looking at Olivia, trying to understand the decision she had made without consulting me. It wasn't until later, when the crowds had dispersed and we found ourselves alone in the model apartment at the top of the Cascade Heights Tower, that I finally asked the question, why? Olivia stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city she had helped shape. Because it was time, she said simply. For both of us. You could have warned me, she turned, smiling. And given you time to talk yourself out of it? To overthink all the reasons why you're not ready? She shook her head. You've been ready for months, Elena. Everyone sees it but you. But why step down at all? Meridian is your life. That's exactly why. Her expression grew serious. For too long, this company has been my entire identity. I built it, I nurtured it, I defended it, and somewhere along the way, I forgot that there should be more to life than balance. Sheets and board meetings. She walked over to the sleek kitchen, island and poured 2 glasses of champagne from the bottle chilling there. When Martin betrayed me, it hurt, not just because of the infidelity, but because he was right about one thing. Our marriage had become a business arrangement. I had become someone who valued achievement over connection. She handed me a glass. I don't want that to be my whole story. So what's next for you? I asked, still trying to absorb the magnitude of the day's events. Travel. Reading books that have nothing to do with real estate or management theory. Maybe even dating again. Though that thought terrifies me more than any hostile takeover attempt. She laughed, the sound lighter than I'd ever heard from her. And professionally? I meant what I said about remaining as chairwoman. I'll be there for guidance when you need it. And I have some ideas for new ventures that I think you'll find interesting. Sustainable housing initiatives, community development projects in underserved areas. Things that create value beyond profit. I nodded slowly, beginning to understand. You're not leaving. You're evolving? Exactly. She raised her glass. To evolution. Yours and mine. We clinked glasses, the crystal making a clear, bright sound in the quiet apartment. There's something else you should know, Olivia said after a moment. Something I heard this morning. I waited, suddenly alert to the shift in her tone. Martin's new venture failed. The consortium of investors he claimed to have assembled for his takeover attempt? They backed out when they realized he couldn't deliver what he promised. And without Meridian's resources and connections, his attempts to compete with us fell flat. Is that why you scheduled the ribbon cutting for today? To coincide with not just your divorce, but his failure? She smiled, not denying it. Petty? Perhaps. Satisfying? Absolutely. And his family? Scattered. Lawrence tried to join a competitor, but was let go after 6 months. Derek moved back to his hometown. Rebecca and James are still together, running a small real estate office with limited success. And Natalie? The baby. Olivia's expression softened slightly. Still with Martin, as far as I know. The child is innocent in all this. I hope she grows up happy, despite her father's flaws. We were silent for a moment, both contemplating how much had changed in a year. They underestimated you, I said finally. All of them. They underestimated us, she corrected. None of this would have happened without you standing beside me, Elena. You were loyal when it mattered most. I believed in you. In what you built. And now it's yours to lead. She set down her glass, her expression turning serious again. Don't make my mistakes. Don't let Meridian become your whole life. Build something meaningful outside these walls, too. I nodded, knowing she was right. For all her success, Olivia was only now learning to find fulfillment beyond her professional achievements. It was a lesson I would take to heart. As the sunset painted the city in shades of gold and amber, we stood together at the window of the building we had created, mentor and protege, friends and allies, 2 women who had weathered betrayal and emerged stronger. Below us, the lights of Cascade Heights began to flicker on, illuminating what we had built together. And ahead of us stretched new beginnings, different paths, but guided by the same principles that had brought us through the darkest days. Integrity, resilience, and the courage to rebuild what had been broken. Ready to face the world as CEO? Olivia asked, a hint of mischief in her smile. Ready, I confirmed, surprising myself with how true it felt. But only if you promise to answer my panicked phone calls at 3 a.m. when I have no idea what I'm doing. She laughed, the sound echoing in the empty apartment. Deal. Though something tells me those calls will be few and far between. Together, we stepped away from the window and toward the door, leaving behind the setting sun and moving toward whatever came next. For Meridian, for Olivia, and for me. The path ahead was uncharted, but for the first time in a long while, that uncertainty felt like possibility rather than peril. And in that moment, I understood what Olivia had known all along, that sometimes the greatest act of creation comes not from building something new, but from having the courage to dismantle what no longer serves you and remake it into something better.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.